What if the most reliable investment you ever made had a V8 engine and zero airbags? This is a vintage car collection, not a museum, though the DFW Car and Toy Museum in Texas houses over 200 classic and collectible cars across 150,000 square feet. This is a living, breathing financial portfolio on wheels. When most people hear classic car, they picture American icons, the Ford Mustang, the Chevy Bel Air, rolling symbols of mid-century confidence. But the term covers any collectible vehicle prized for age, rarity, condition, and cultural weight. And this obsession isn't American. Europe built its own legends: Porsche, Maserati, Ferrari. Machines that turned engineering into art and art into auction records. The appetite for vintage iron is genuinely global. Here's the core argument. Scarcity plus cultural meaning equals appreciation. A 1967 Shelby GT500 produced in limited numbers cannot be manufactured again. Supply is permanently fixed. Demand, as nostalgia compounds, only rises. Unlike a stock certificate, a vintage car is tangible. You can drive it, display it, insure it, and sell it. The Hagerty Collector's Vehicle Index showed mixed performance in the 2010s, with some sectors appreciating while others declined. That's not a hobby. That's a strategy. But appreciation is only half the story. To understand why collectors obsess over these machines, you need to look under the hood, literally. Vintage engines are mechanical poems. Every component is visible, serviceable, and brutally logical. Here's where romance meets reality. A common misconception is that classic cars were built sturdier than modern cars. They weren't. Modern vehicles have crumple zones, high-strength steel, and computer-optimized safety geometry. Vintage cars have charm and cast iron. What vintage cars do offer is repairability. A 1965 Mustang carburetor can be rebuilt on a kitchen table with hand tools. A modern fuel injection system requires diagnostic software costing more than some used cars. Simplicity is its own kind of durability. But not every old car appreciates. The vintage market is brutally selective. Condition, provenance, and model rarity determine whether a vehicle triples in value or rusts into irrelevance in someone's backyard. Which brings us to one of the strangest facts in the collector world: abandoned luxury cars. Ferraris, Lamborghinis turn up in fields, garages, and deserts across the globe. Machines worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, left to decay. Some were seized by authorities and never reclaimed. Others were forgotten by estates, buried in storage units, or left when owners died without succession plans. Wealth, it turns out, doesn't guarantee stewardship. The old Chrysler garage represents the opposite extreme. It maintains a focused collection of rare Chrysler vehicles, each car catalogued with original build sheets, factory window stickers, and service records going back to first ownership. That paper trail isn't sentimentality. It's the difference between a car that sells at auction and one that sets a record. Provenance is the paper trail behind a vehicle. Original ownership records, service history, race results, celebrity association. A Ferrari with documented racing heritage can fetch 10 times the price of an identical model without that documentation. The story is the asset. Here's a counterintuitive twist. A heavy-handed restoration can destroy value. Collectors call it over-restored. Replace original components with modern parts, and you've erased authenticity. An unrestored car, in honest original condition, often commands a premium over a freshly painted replica of itself. The global vintage car market runs through auction houses like R.M. Sotheby's and Gooding & Company, private brokers, and specialist dealers. Major sales happen in Monterey, Geneva, and Paris. This is a structured financial market with its own indices, analysts, and price cycles. Which raises the obvious question: is this market only accessible to billionaires? The honest answer is nuanced. Entry-level collectibles, a clean 1970s Datsun 240Z, a well-preserved Alfa Romeo Spider, can be acquired for under $50,000. But the purchase price is just the entry fee. Storage, specialized insurance, maintenance by mark-specific mechanics, and the opportunity cost of illiquid capital, those carrying costs are where the casual investor gets separated from the serious collector. This is also where passion becomes a financial variable. Collectors who genuinely love their vehicles maintain them obsessively. That obsession preserves condition. Preserved condition drives value. In this market, emotional investment and financial return move in the same direction. American muscle cars, Mustangs, Bel Airs, Chargers, dominate the mid-market. European exotics, from Ferrari, Maserati, and Porsche, occupy the stratospheric tier. Both categories appreciate, but for entirely different reasons, rooted in different cultural mythologies. American muscle carries the mythology of the open highway, post-war prosperity, and individual freedom. A 1969 Dodge Charger isn't just transportation, it's a cultural artifact of a specific American moment that can never be recreated, only preserved. European exotics carry a different mythology: motorsport heritage, Italian coach-building artistry, German engineering precision. When a Ferrari wins at Le Mans, every road car wearing that badge absorbs a fraction of that glory. Racing history is baked into the valuation. But here's the tension serious collectors never ignore. The vintage car market crashed hard in 1989, and again during the 2008 financial crisis. Blue-chip values dropped 30 to 40%. Illiquid assets in a liquidity crisis are a specific kind of painful. Sophisticated collectors hedge by diversifying across categories, mixing American muscle, European exotics, and emerging collectibles like Japanese sports cars from the 1990s. No single segment crashes simultaneously. Diversification inside the asset class is the professional move. Here's the actual insight. Billionaires don't collect vintage cars primarily because they appreciate financially. They collect because vintage cars sit at the intersection of three things wealthy people crave: scarcity, storytelling, and status that cannot be purchased new. You can write a check for a new Rolls-Royce today. Anyone with sufficient funds can, but a genuine 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO, only 36 were built, cannot be ordered. It must be earned through relationships, reputation, and patience. That exclusivity is the point. This tells us something broader about how extreme wealth operates. When Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen died in 2018, his estate auctioned his car collection for over $60 million. Not because buyers needed transportation, but because owning a car that Allen owned added a layer of irreplaceable narrative. At a certain level of wealth, you're not buying metal and rubber. You're buying a chapter of history with your name attached. For the rest of us, the lesson is transferable, and it's backed by data. The Knight Frank Luxury Investment Index, which tracks rare whiskey, art, watches, and classic cars, showed that passion assets as a category outperformed global equities over the decade ending in 2023. Vintage watches, first edition books, and original artwork followed the same logic as vintage cars: genuine scarcity, plus documented provenance, plus an active community of buyers. Remember those abandoned Ferraris and Lamborghinis? Seized or simply forgotten? They're the cautionary end of this story. Even the most valuable asset depreciates to zero without maintenance, documentation, and a plan for what happens next. If this market genuinely interests you, the entry point is education, not capital. Study mark histories, attend concours events, read auction results. The collectors who win long-term are the ones who knew exactly what they were buying before they ever opened a checkbook. Here's the number that puts the entire market in perspective. In 2018, a 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO sold for $48.4 million at an auction, the most expensive car ever sold at that point. The buyer wasn't purchasing performance. A modern supercar would lap it on any track. They were purchasing one of 36 objects that exist at the precise intersection of Ferrari's championship era, hand-built Italian coachwork, and 6 decades of unbroken legend. That's not a car purchase. That's the acquisition of a primary source document from automotive history. So back to that opening question. A V8 engine and 0 airbags as a reliable investment? The answer is, sometimes, absolutely yes. But the real lesson from every serious vintage car collection is this. Scarcity is manufactured by time, and time is the one resource that even a billionaire cannot buy more of.